Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're talking about the spell Compulsion.
Whoa. This is a 4th level bard only, except for Order, Domain, and Oath of Glory. I love unique spells like this. I'm okay whenever unique spells are given to subclasses. Because like, oh yeah, it flavorfully slots into specific kind of, yeah, I get it.
It's still exclusive.
Yeah, it
It
still
still
feels
counts.
exclusive. Yeah. So this, yeah, like I said, 4th level bard spell, cast time of an action, duration a minute, concentration, 30-foot range, verbal somatic components, wisdom saving throws involved. Thanks D&D Beyond for giving me that little tag. Creatures of your choice that you can see within range that can hear you must make a wisdom saving throw. A target automatically succeeds on the saving throw if it cannot be charmed. On a failed save, a target is affected by the spell until the spell ends. You can use a bonus action on each of your turns to designate a direction that is horizontal to you, which is like cardinal direction, compass. Each affected target must use as much of its movement as possible to move in the direction on its next turn. It can take its action before it moves. After moving in this way, it can make another wisdom saving throw to end the effect. The target isn't compelled to move into an obviously deadly hazard, such as a fire or pit, but it will provoke opportunity attacks to move in the designated direction. The last little bit of text isn't an outlier for how movement opportunity attacks work. It's just this is stating that that isn't considered moving into obviously a deadly hazard, which is nifty. I'm glad that included these words here, teaches you a little bit about the rules while learning how the spell works. It's fun. It's fancy. I'm a fan.
Well, I mean, what it says to me is that, like, even though this is forced movement in a way, it's you're compelling them to use their own movement
Yeah.
rather than like yanking them somewhere.
That's the really important difference. If
Right.
movement spent on your turn, even if it's compelled or forced or whatever, if you're spending your speed to do it, then it counts for attacks of opportunity. That is how that works. So,
What else? I had something else to start with, but now I forgot.
Compulsion's kind of neat.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, all right, you keep talking. I gotta look through this again to see what I was gonna say.
Sure. This is obviously going to be better in groups that have lots of melee characters that can immediately take advantage of it, right? It's really easy to be a bard with a paladin and a barbarian alongside you. Maybe you got a rogue, maybe you got a ranger, some other middly skirmishy character, monks even, and you get 3 of them there in the middle of things. You go, okay, great. I can get these people in the compulsion. We'll get 3 or 4 free attacks out of it. If you can get 3 or 4 free attacks out of it over its duration, it's definitely worth the cast because that's a bunch of free damage, people killing things, smiting, all the kinds of nonsense. You can do some cool stuff with a coordinated party. Now, that being said, if you don't have that, if you're with a single fighter, and then you've got you, the backline cleric, or the backline wizard, this spell is dookie. This spell is very challenging to get to necessarily set up. Now, you could try and get your party to build around it. You could try and get your party to say, okay, we're going to make a giant area of wall of fire. Things won't obviously move into the wall of fire, so that's a little bit rough. Things like spike growth can be paired with this, but like they'll stop once they know it's obviously dangerous once they trigger it the first time. So there's still some limitations there. Compulsion ends up being this kind of neat little crowd control tool that you really want to get some attack opportunities out of, and if you can't, it's probably not worth casting, but if you can get again like 3 or 4, I'm pretty fine with it.
All right. Well, yeah, I remember what I was gonna say, but to what you're saying there, I mean, unless your entire party's got something to do with the reaction, you have a pretty good chance of getting several attacks of opportunity out of this, even if you got you're heavily weighted with backline casters. I mean, getting people to move their full movement in direction. I mean, if the wizard's got nothing else to use his reaction on and somebody's running past them, why not give them a little stab? Maybe you're not going to do much, but
I think then the question, right, is like, what is the value of that specific attack opportunity versus a different attack opportunity, right? If the wizard just has their quarterstaff out, that's their focus, and they get a +1 to hit with that quarterstaff, they're doing a DA +1 damage with it. Sure, they weren't otherwise using that reaction. Sure, that is technically beneficial. Maybe you get that, and you get, a reaction of your own to like hit it with your loot or whatever. If you pair those with a fighter thing, is that still worth the 4th level slot? And I don't think that's where it starts to fall apart, right? I don't think 2 bad reactions is worth a 4th level concentration bonus action plus action to cast setup. Like, there's a lot that goes into making compulsion work.
it's not just 2. I mean, it's concentration up to a minute. It's like, and
Yes.
if you were compelling, like,
but once they move, you have to like chase them down, and they get to repeat the saves every turn regardless. so it's not necessarily going to live up that long. Again, I think 3 or 4 is regularly going to be on 2 frontline characters, right? You got a paladin, you got a fighter, you got a barbarian, you got a monk, you got, even like a moon druid or a hexblade warlock. Those are going to be the characters that take the attacks opportunity, aggressively move at them again after they move 30 feet, and then they get it one more time, and then the saves kind of wear off, is where I see this kind of happen.
All right, now here's what I was going to say before. I'm a little confused here. Like each affected target must use as much of its movement as possible to move in that direction on its next turn. It can take its action before it moves.
Sure can.
Now, you get a move, you get an action. What about after it moves? Can it move first and then take its action, or does it have to?
It's voluntary, so it can take its action before it moves. It could also opt to take its action afterwards. It has to move on its turn. It gets to decide when on its turn it wants to move. Bonus actions also will slot in there wherever they want. So bonus actions, as a rule, can be placed in between most anytime you have an opportunity to make a decision on your turn. So they also qualify for what niche monsters have bonus actions.
Because it explicitly states before it moves.
Yes,
doesn't say after. Because I was thinking, if it doesn't use its action first, maybe it moves and it has to use the dash action. No.
No.
All right.
This thing it'll have the opportunity if it wants to take a 1 swing before it runs, and then it'll take its action, make its attack rolls with multi-attack or whatever, make its attack with one attack, make cast a spell or whatever, then it'll move, and if it didn't do any of those actions prior, it can then take its action after it can dash then if it wants to, and doing so so it uses as much of its movements and an increment measurement that is your speed.
Right.
If you use dashing and increases your movement, it has to keep going further away from you, I believe. I believe whenever you add to your movement, if you were to take the dash action, you have to go further away from the group. I do not believe you're allowed to turn around because it has to use as much movement as possible to move in a different direction. If that is possible to dash, it has to dash. If it chooses to take an action that isn't to dash, it doesn't add it doesn't add its speed to its movement and then doesn't have to do it again. So as long as it takes any action after it moves, it doesn't have to dash away from you. I believe is the answer to your question that I stumbled into halfway through explaining something different.
Yes. I don't know if I agree.
It's not compelled to dash. It is compelled to use as much movement as possible. And that
is as much movement as possible.
You default to your speed of movement. You can dash to add movement to it, but you can also take action because it specifies you can take actions prior. I would agree. Yeah. I would also state that if you don't take an action prior, take an action afterwards, it doesn't have to add to your movement. You're not compelled to add to your movement. You're compelled to use as much of it as possible.
See, I'm of the mind that because it explicitly states before it moves that if it doesn't take its action then, it blew its action. It's got to keep running.
It definitely doesn't say anything close to that. It just says each target has to use as much of its movement as possible to move in that direction on its next turn. It can take its action before it moves. It doesn't specify anything about spending its action to gain additional movement, which is what dashing is.
All right.
I could be wrong. Mary J. McCrawford's like, no, Bob is absolutely right. If they don't take an action prior, they have to dash. I doubt it.
Can we at least agree that it's needlessly ambiguous?
Absolutely. There could have definitely been a character can take its action prior to or after.
Or after, moving. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
There's a lot of meaningless text in this game, like igniting things that aren't being worn or carried. I would love to see more meaningful text in this game that explains these kinds of rule problems. But
I'm going to carry all my dynamite just to make sure it's safe from
fire. Not going to get it. Yeah, it cannot catch on fire if you're holding it.
All right. Well, all right. As to what we were saying before, yeah, maybe it's not so great with a bunch of backline casters, but I think most parties are going to have enough meaty characters to make this worthwhile.
Yeah, and like I don't think it's ever going to be amazing on those sheets still, though, right? Like this isn't an all-star spell.
I don't think generally it's going to be amazing, but I think there are going to be instances where it surprises you and
sure.
Wow, those guys, like we were just like a meat grinder.
I think if you have specifically a Cavalier in the group that gets infinite number of attack or gets a reaction to every creature's turn, that's really cute.
Yeah.
Everyone with Cavalier and has a really bad time and just gets absolutely eviscerated by the greatsword or whatever. That seems like a very good. That seems like a cool synergy, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. And it's got my favorite text. Well, it doesn't say it, but creatures of your choice within range. That could be so many people.
Yeah. You can get a lot of people compelled to do things.
Yeah.
It's This is a weird one where it doesn't really scale that well with quantity of creatures, just because moving them isn't that, like, moving them, their speed isn't that relevant, because they are able to, if they can save out of it, they can just move back the next turn, and there's not really any actions lost, right? Because they took the action before they moved, and they saved. If they saved out of it, they move back, and they have their action again, and there's been no meaningful difference there, unless your characters have been moving, right? So it's going to leave it to be, you really just care about your quantity of opportunity attacks, right? This is really, really good against one thing and 5 frontline characters, right? You go, okay, big bad, it's going to move 30 feet away from you all on its turn, and you're all going to have free attack opportunity. Everyone continue dogpiling on it, chase it down, and just keep slashing away as it keeps retreating backwards, right? That's all going to be options that you have for it. That's pretty cool. Now, there's one really large thing that we haven't covered yet. This is very relevant to this spell. Disengaging is an action.
Mm-hmm.
You can opt to disengage if you're compulsed. Now, often that's going to be better than it taking attack opportunity, right? Because you're denying it an action now. But it is always an option that can take if you are in a scenario with a big bad that doesn't want to take 5 attacks opportunity from your frontline party. They can go, okay, disengage, and then I will move backwards, and I'm sad that I wasted one of my actions. That's a bummer. That's still a pretty good use case for this. It's just, consider that monsters aren't always going to be able to provoke the attack opportunity. But if you ever provoke the attack opportunity or forcing them to disengage, I think you're pretty happy with those outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, if somebody is already engaged with them, that comes into place. Sometimes, though, they're going to be using ranged attacks or whatever, and you're going to force them to run right by the dude, and can't disengage from that.
You can disengage prior. Disengaging just means if you would leave a threat range on your turn, you don't take attack opportunity. So you
No,
could.
but I'm talking about, like, all right, they're shooting arrows at your friend.
Sure.
You force them, to move straight past your friend.
Yes.
So
before moving, they could take the disengage action and not provoke an opportunity that way.
Wait, they can disengage before they're even engaged?
Sure can.
That can't be right.
It is. There is a lot of weird names of things. Disengaging is normally used whenever you're engaged with things, but the disengage action, I'll pull it up real quick. Actions in combat, where are you at?
Just listen to the sentence you just said.
Bob, I would like you to
be engaged to disengage.
I'd like you to remember back to recently, whenever you were like, but they're invisible, and invisibility means
yes.
To disengage, if you take the disengage action, all this simply says is your movement doesn't provoke attack opportunity for the rest of the turn. It doesn't care if you're engaged prior.
You win.
That's just the rules.
That's
it
stupid.
may be. Listen, it's really funny that we can say the sentence. You don't have to be engaged to disengage, but here we are.
All right. Yep. All right. Well, that's something.
Yeah, just things to keep in mind whenever using this, especially, and that's more of a thing that the DM wants to consider when using this. I think a lot of DMs want to see their party be the meat grinder, though. It's really fun and satisfying to watch a plan like this come together. You have to jump through a lot of hoops for it to work really well, though, and it's definitely not going to go as planned in a lot of encounters. So this isn't something that I would recommend busting out every session, but if you've got a group that likes playing with it, you can probably have a good time with it.
All right. Speaking of jumping through some hoops to make this work, I had an idea. They can't run. They won't run into anything that's obviously dangerous or obviously deadly.
Yeah.
That's
an obviously deadly hazard such as a fire or pit. And I would argue pits aren't necessarily deadly, nor is fire. It's dangerous, it hurts, but
that's what I was just thinking.
Instantly kill you.
It does give you those two examples, though. So
it gives you the two examples and uses the word deadly, which I'm like, does it only mean deadly fire or deadly pits, or does it just overly use it? Does it take this adjective that's a bit harsh and apply it to these less harsh situations? I don't know.
All right. So what I'm thinking is, you first obscure an area, like with a sleet storm or something. Then you cast a area of effect duration spell right on the edge of it. Then send them in.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
If you can jump through those 3 hoops, absolutely.
Yep. Is that ever worth it? I don't know.
Sure. You have to have 3 characters combining their powers together when they could have just cast it on top of the creatures.
Yes. But this is a fun thing to do.
Sure.
The compelled creatures, they get, oh, well, I'm walking into a fog. That's not a big deal. Ah!
You're specifically doing this for the enjoyment of them not knowing they're about to enter into the dangerous space, as opposed to just putting them in the dangerous space.
Well, yeah, like, we are already in like a fight to the death. Somebody on one side or the other has offended the other party. Things went south. Diplomacy didn't work. Yeah, I need them dead. They've got this smug look on their face as they're walking toward what I know is a deadly hazard.
Such as a
That's
cloud kill.
whatever.
Yeah, like
Whatever it
a
is.
wall of fire. A
Yeah,
thing you could have cast on them.
I know, but they like. I want the satisfaction of their smug face before they go in there.
So you have to whisper to your wizard buddy, and then you have to look at them all, and you whisper to your wizard buddy, and then you whisper to your druid buddy, and then your druid buddy sets up a fog cloud, and then your wizard buddy sets up a wall of fire, and then you can polish them and get the smug look.
There's no whispering. You just give them the wink because
The wink. You planned this ahead of time,
Yes.
obviously.
You've done this 100 times before.
Yeah. Are you very good adventurers if you've done this 100 times before?
All right. I guess if we're talking about this, there's probably not much else to say.
No.
All right. What do you rate this one?
It's a weird fourth level spell. I think it's probably a 3. There's probably a lot of cool stuff you can do with it in specific groups, especially groups with paladins and groups with rogues. We didn't mention, but rogues can use this as a way to get an attack opportunity, which gives them an extra sneak attack around. So until that's patched out in the next edition, go nuts. Use this as a way to double up your rogue's efficiency. Otherwise, yeah, it's gonna fit only on certain characters. But on the characters if it's on, it's not gonna be game breaking, but it could be pretty fun.
Yeah, 3 sounds about right. It's a little bit high level, but
yeah, 4th is a bit much.
It's a fun thing for a bard to do.
Absolutely, feels very bardy.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was Compulsion. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. Let us know what you think in the comments. Tell us how you've used this. I'm sure you got some good stories.
I also could see like people thinking we overrate it, but yeah, let me know.
Overrated?
Yeah, maybe.
Let us know what you think. Whether we overrated it, underrated it, or rated it just right, like Goldilocks. And share your stories. Our comment section thirsts for your contributions. Click the like and subscribe and all that, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns and Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.